Hello, hello. Good morning, everybody. Those who are joining us for this second last session. Good morning this Saturday. It's now 11:30. And we have our guest, Wafula Endeleaje.
Niko salama, you can hear me?
Yes, we can hear you loud and clear. Thank you very much
Thank you.
for taking your time. For those who are joining us on Facebook and YouTube, the session is about personal finances for photographers and more or less creative people. But of course, the advantage we have today is that Waf is a photographer, although his first skill or his career is mostly about finance and investment. And I will leave the explanation of what he does on a day-to-day basis to his first few 60 seconds so that we can understand better. But the interesting thing is that we begin this session, and I have known Waf having been nilifundisha Waf photography, coming from his finance and money and kind of real estate background, and he came into photography with a lot of energy. Wafu, unajua wase wanasemanga wewe ndio Rambo wa photography. Wafu has a weakness for gear, but he has amazing work and he's very creative. The few of you who know the project we did called Mashuja, he was one of the lead creatives who are giving us the ideas, the concepts. But today he's going to talk to us about money. And I say that for many of us, perhaps who are not hobbyists, and even some of the hobbyists, you want to make some money. If our money is not in order, tutapata stress mingi. Hata sahi wakati wa COVID, watu wako na stress because of money, etc. So I don't take a lot of time. I'll just hand over to you, Waf. I think we invite you, those who are following the event online, to ask questions, comment, give views, probe. And Waf is a very good teacher. I'm sure he's going to take his time. He's going to take his time to respond to your questions. We are going to take around 45 minutes to an hour, and then we are going to look at your questions, comments, and any responses that you may have. So, Waf, the cameras are yours, and the microphone and the screens. Take it away. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I'm just putting my timer as well so that I don't overshoot. I am known for that weakness. So, thank you all for joining us. Good morning, 22 minutes to afternoon. I'm happy to join you as Steve has kindly introduced me. My name is David Wafula Luwigi, and by training, I am a land economist, meaning I'm the property guy. Then, after I got into property, I also upgraded into finance. So I'm also a investment and finance analyst, and therefore I deal with property and finance. We take care of pension money. We do investments on a day-to-day basis for all asset classes, and I focus primarily on real estate, and personal finance is one of the objectives that many of our investors go into real estate. So it goes without saying that we need to be able to have the basics of finance and also personal finance before we can go into real estate. So I joined photography in 2015, more as a hobbyist. Then the bug called love for gear infected me, and I tried to do a bit of commercial, but my slavery, which is what we call employment, 8 to 5, did not lend me the ability to do the photography full time. So I now remain as an enthusiast. So we'll probably be discussing both from a commercial perspective, what I have seen from my employment side, and from my own personal experience, and together with a few of our friends who we have done a few of the gigs that I believe most of you do as well. So As soon as the presentation is up, I will be good to go. And so today we want to discuss with all of you from a perspective of personal finance. Is your business or your photography enthusiasm, if in case you're not doing it fully for commercial, a part of your personal finance plan? Are you looking to grow the value of your business, or are you just chasing some income streams? And even as you chase those income streams, are they giving you profit, or you remain in the negatives? And finally, because both are an objective, you can either be growing your business value, or you could just be pursuing the income. Then, dependent on your personal finance plan, if you have one, which one is your priority? And if you do not have a priority, we can discuss today how you can think about prioritizing your goals. So I'll start with a bit of philosophy. The first slide is just but a way in which life works, so that we see how does life work. In my school of thought, life works when you know your goals, then you know how to get there, process. So since we are discussing finance, you need to know how financial systems work. Then finally, you need to be able to have the capability. One, know how to create the right environment, and two, know which are the resources you need to combine in that right environment you have created for you to be able to execute and perform well in your personal finance goals. So when we look at the guiding philosophy, since we are photographers, I tried to play around with colors. We all know that black is a combination of all the three primary colors at their maximum saturation. So the executed well is right at the center, meaning you have all the components of what your goals are. If you have a partner, both your goals are aligned. Even the Bible says, how can two walk together unless they are agreed? And that is the yellow circle. Then once you know what you want, you need to know how to get to that destination. And that is what we call competence or skills. Have you researched and known how, in this case, money works? If you are doing anything else in your life, na unajaribu kukatia dem, do you know how to put a dem in a box? There is a way. And finally, after you've gotten the competence of the red circle, then you actually go and build your capability, which is the blue circle. So anytime you see a poor performer, that is the green text, they only have the yellow circle. They are interested in the goals, and they have the blue circles. They have the resources, and they've created the environment, but they don't know perfectly what they are doing. So they are operating outside of the red circle. Then they will have poor performance. If they have purple, it means they have red and blue in the absence of yellow. They are not interested. Huyo ni mtu mwenye unasukuma afanye kitu. They'll keep giving you excuses. And if you see orange, it means this is somebody who is interested or knows what they want, yellow circle. They know how to get it, red circle, but hawana time. Ama hawana pesa, they can't afford it. They don't have the budget or the capability. They're operating outside of the blue circle. So they will always be late, or they will actually never do it. So going forward, how can we use this basic philosophy to come up with our goals for personal finance planning? So when you go to the next stage of thinking about your personal finance goals, you need to determine why are you in business, because many people are in business for different reasons. And if this business is connected to your personal finance, then what are the reasons you need to do personal finance planning? If you're in employment, why do you need personal finance planning? So whether you're in employment or in business, this applies to both of us. And I'll suggest that there is a book called The Bucket Approach. Those who are writing notes, you will find it on Amazon if you're a digital reader, or you can go to our various bookstop in Yaya Center and Prestige Bookshop at Wabera Street in CBD, opposite Jubilee and opposite Salama House, in the vicinity of the Supreme Court. You can find the bucket approach or the bucket plan, and you will be able to see how we want to apply its various concepts in coming up with our goals for personal finance planning. So let's go to the first step. Why are we in business? There are mainly four reasons why people are in business. One, to make a living. Two, to build a business they can pass on to the next generation. Three, like most people who take their businesses to Shark Tank or Dragon's Den or whatever, they want to build enough value for an investor to actually buy it for a good sum of money. Or number four, they don't really care about the money. They just want to make a social impact in the world. So that's a theory or a concept that I was introduced to by our great South African businessman called Vusi Thembekwayo, whom you can go to YouTube University and just check him out. Listen to that clip. It's a talk he's giving to entrepreneurs in Namibia. And I think it can inspire you, because once you've determined which of those four reasons are why you're in a business, then it will help you to pursue the next step of determining why you need personal finance planning. So when you look at the reasons for why we need personal finance planning, the next step would be, one, choose. Do you just want to meet your basic expenses? And if you're just meeting your basic expenses, are you meeting them by being forced to work? If you do not work, you do not eat. That is what we call financial security. Financial insecurity is when you cannot even meet your basic expenses, whether you're working or not. If you're working and you're not meeting your basic expenses, it's either your expenses are too high or your income is too low. You need to balance it out. So we do not want to talk about financial insecurity. We want to start with the first goal you should be looking for is financial security. That active means I have to work, I am able to actively generate some income so that I can cover my basic expenses: food, shelter, clothing, not only mine, but also for my spouse and children, my immediate surrounding. And in the African culture, my immediate dependents might include my mother, my father, or a brother and sister here and there. The next goal you could be thinking about is, I'm already secure. I meet my basic expenses. What next? Financial independence is, if I lost my job today and therefore I do not have to work, meaning I have income that is coming from some other investments. Passive means without having to work, I still have cash flow, income that is coming in that is still able to cover my basic expenses. It means I am independent. I am not a slave. I do not have to trade my time, my human capital, whether it is manual labor or vocational skills, creativity. I do not have to trade my resources, time, and professional expertise with salary. So financial independence is where I am able to generate income passively. Then freedom is Bill Gates, Mark Zuckerberg, Jeff Bezos, Elon Musk. They can sponsor Ferraris, they can sponsor spaceships, Sir Richard Branson. They're not talking basic expenses anymore, and they don't have to work. If they are working, it's because they love to work, but they don't have to. They can be on holiday 365 days in a year, and not only basic expenses, but they can also cover their dream lifestyle expenses. So from that perspective, we need to check our current circumstances. If I lack income, if I lose my job, if business gets slow, or one day in future my business collapses, or I get into a personal accident that incapacitates me from working, or naturally I get old and I retire, I no longer can work. In both instances, whether current impacts of COVID and anything else that might be slowing down our incomes, or future, whether it's a crisis or pure operation of nature, aging, will you be able to continue generating your cash in a manner that you will still be either financially secure, financially independent, or financially free? So what's your plan? That's what we want to discuss today. So when you go and buy that book, which I have recommended to you, it basically just tells you split your finances into 3 categories. Category 1, security. Make sure that for the short term, 0 to 2 years, you are able, without losing sleep at night, whether you're working or not working, you're able to cover your basic living expenses. So this means you need to have put some cash aside, some savings, or some short-term investments, what we call money markets. Money markets are things where you're giving somebody money for a short time. Fixed deposits, unit trusts like the CIC, where if you wanted to withdraw money from a savings account from a bank, you can, if you have an ATM, you can either remove it from an ATM, or if it's a savings account that they are trying to discipline you, you have to give them like 1 day notice, or you have to explain yourself to the branch manager. Or if it is the CIC or any other money market fund, where you go and put in money similar to how you put it like a SACCO, you give them 4 days notice and you're able to withdraw your money. So it is for short-term expenses, so that if you suffer any personal emergency, you are not put in a crisis. Insurance policies also come under this category, such that if I am able to save some policy for education or medical or other types of insurance, when I'm in a crisis, I lose my job, business shuts down, I lose a loved one, somebody is hospitalized, whether me or one of my dependents, I have somewhere I can access money immediately without having to be in a personal crisis. Then the growth bucket is where I don't need this money now. I need this money for the future. So we will discuss how income is different from assets, because the only 2 concepts you need to understand with personal finance planning is the concept of income and assets, and what is their relationship. So if we could talk about the security bucket, the short term, it is purely securing your income, that I can cover my expenses day to day, here and now, without having to get stressed. And the growth bucket is more about accumulating your assets, in the sense that when you're not using money right now, you can convert it into an asset. But before you convert it into an asset, most assets cost quite a bit of money. So you need to be able to ramp up or save up enough money so that you can convert it into one lump of an asset. And that is where the growth bucket comes in. And then finally, the dreams bucket. When you want to have a cruise to Greece on a cruise ship, if COVID protocols still allow that. Or if you want to travel to Barcelona, Spain, or now you want to travel to PSG to see Messi play. Or you just want to go to Mombasa and give your Gashogwa a good time. You do not want to interfere with your ability to have fun in life by saying I'm always saving for the future. But at the same time, you do not want your going to have fun and release stress to interfere with your ability to save for the future. So we separate the dreams bucket so that if you want to buy that dream house for yourself, you start saving now. So that becomes a long-term project, 7 years and above. Mostly we usually use 10 years. And we say that if I had known that in the year 2008, when I was buying Safaricom at 5 shillings each, if I had known that it would get to 45 shillings, which it hit last week, then I would have probably put 1 million shillings there. And 10, 12 years later, that 1 million would have been 5 million. But supposing I had actually put 1 million in 2011 when Safaricom had hit 2 shillings. Now, if I had put 1 million and had bought enough shares for Safaricom when it was just 2 shillings, when it hits 25, when it hits 45 bob, when it was at 45 last week, then I would have made how much money from 1 million? More than 8. Not 8, actually. 45 divided by 2 is 22. So you'd have made about 22 million. Yeah, just like that. So you can also use 10,000. So that's 10,000 if you had put it in Safaricom and it was 5 bob or 2 bob. How much is it now? But you can see how long that has taken. Or if you bought a plot in Kamulu and waited for 10 years, you'll have bought it at 300,000, but 10 years later it would be 3 million. So you could either sell it, then go and build a house for yourself or something. But you can see that the dreams bucket helps you to now pursue long-term projects without interfering with your immediate expenses. The only rule you need to follow with the buckets approach is you cannot put money in bucket 3 before you put money in bucket 2. And you cannot put money in bucket 2 before you put money in bucket 1. So fill up bucket 1, only the overflow goes into bucket 2. And if you now fill up bucket 2, you can then have it overflow into bucket 3 so that mtoto asikose school fees, lakini utuambie you're saving for a trip to Mombasa. That is what that overflow rule prevents. So once we have the buckets approach, the details you can get more when you read the book, or if you want a more personal class, the PAK office has our contacts and we can be put in touch directly with you. So for now, we will just move on without going into too much details. So that now, once you have come up with your goals for each bucket, what are my immediate short-term goals for financial security? That is the security bucket. What are my immediate medium-term goals for growing the value of my assets so that I'm able to pay my children's school fees when they come. I'm able to pay for university when they get there. I'm able to buy a house when I need one. And finally, when I want to leave an inheritance or when I want to buy my dream house, how will I have planned for it? So once you have come up with those goals, then you need to know how the system works. So this process is one, knowing what are you working towards? What is your objective? We've already covered that. Then based on that, we've said we only have two concepts which you need to understand in finance: income and assets. And assets has an additional two concepts. You can either be accumulating cash before you convert it into an asset, or we can call it the accumulation of assets. And then finally, how can you grow those assets so that in the future they will be able to give you the income that you want. So that is the process we want to look at, and therefore the process of finance is just predicated on one point. Are you generating income? That's the only question we are interested in. If you see people stealing left, right, and center, and especially here in Kenya, it is because they want to generate income. Huko mbele. It is not because they want that asset. You see assets which are full of value, but they don't generate income, like land which has not yet been developed. Hawezi pata rent, na labda ukiuza unless umejenga nyumba mzuri ama umengojea 10 years, hautauza na ile bei ungetamani. So what we want to see is always make sure you get an asset that generates income. And which type of income is better? The type of income that is better is the one that I do not have to work. And that is why we call it passive income. So that whether I am able to work or not, I am still able to cover my basic living expenses. Or alternatively, I am able to cover even my dream lifestyle expenses. And therefore, when you see us talking about accumulating an asset, or the asset value we are trying to achieve is a particular critical mass, it is because, let me use the objective of when I retire, I want to be earning 100,000 per month. Let's assume in stage one, Waf, my name is Waf. Let's assume Waf in stage one that we've already discussed came up with a target that when Waf retires, I want to be earning 100,000 per month. Then it means that by the time I retire, because I'll not be working, I need to have made sure that I have an asset that can generate 100,000 per month, even when I'm not working. So that asset that I'm targeting is what we call the critical mass of assets. So when we go to the next page, you will be able to see that, one, there are basically three types of assets. So the first type of asset is what everybody was born with, which is the human assets. So the human assets are that every one of you, God willing, was born with a sound mind and with an able body. So you're able to exchange your time and your skills for a salary, or you can go into entrepreneurship and then you will be paid. So the first way you will be paid is in cash, which is hizo gunia ziko na madola. When you get that cash, that becomes your income. Alternatively, you can decide, instead of spending that cash, either you buy assets which you would prefer. Remember, I want to have 100,000 shillings when I retire. So I can start buying assets, kaplot, kenye kakiiva, by the time I am retiring, ndio itakuwa inanitolea pesa. Either I've built rentals on it or whatever. Or I buy a bond. Or I've given you the example of Safaricom shares. If people who had been the age of 48 years in 2008, now they are 60 in 2021. If they had bought Safaricom shares with 1 million bob, when it was 2 bob. Saisi yako na pesa ya retire. So there are two types of assets, the real assets or the real estate. It's called real because you can see, feel, touch, and the financial assets, which are now paper assets because you can't see, feel, or touch it, like shares za Safaricom. Can you smell them? Can you see them? Can you touch them? But shamba unaweza ona shamba. Nyumba unaweza guza nyumba, unaweza shika. So the difference between real assets are the tangibility. So the real assets or the paper assets, which are paper assets are called financial assets, like bonds, fixed deposits, shares. Both of them, as you can see, they are just income. Only that now the assets will give you income in future, and your salary or business income is giving you income now. So that is the only difference between income and assets. Income is cash money you're spending now. Assets is cash money you have converted for future income. So once you've understood that concept, then we can go to what do you need to do in terms of process. Then you need to do two things. One, from the income that you're generating now, you need to apportion a bit of it, use what you're using today, and the balance of it, save it. What is the one that you're using today covering? Your basic living expenses. And then the one which you have saved, I will split it again into two. Part of the savings should be used for immediate emergencies. I've given you examples. Put a fixed deposit in a bank, put a saving in a circle, go and buy some short-term investments like money markets, CIC insurance, unit trusts, or go and buy a car insurance policy for medical so that when a crisis comes, you're not looking at your pocket, you just go and claim from insurance so that now you are able to create an emergency fund, and that is part one of savings. Part two of savings needs to be converted into assets for future income, and that needs to be invested. So that part is what we say we are accumulating it, and then we will invest it, or we are accumulating it by investing it. Now, when you go to the buckets plan, the middle bucket, that is where you throw that money. You call it the growth bucket. That bucket is making money multiply itself so that later on in life, whether it is 2 years from today, 7 years from today, 10, 20, 30 years from today, I have taken a bit of the money that I was generating now and using the powerful concept of compound interest, making sure by that time it is multiplied and it becomes enough to sustain my basic living expenses then in future. So investments is all about two things: growing your future income, and two, making sure that that future income becomes passive rather than having to depend on you to work. So now that we've understood what we wanted to do, and now we know how to do it, kuna politician siku hizi anasema mambo ni kusema na kusema na kutenda. Now you just do it. I think that's what Nike tells us. So when you want to just do it, what do you need to do? So there's another book I'm going to recommend to you. It's called The 4 Disciplines of Execution. Go and read that book. It changed my life. I have a 15 minutes video that summarizes that book, actually 5 minutes video that summarizes that book, which I am going to share with PAK so that they can circulate it together with this video so that it can help those who might be better off with video rather than books. On one, how they can look at their wildly important goals. In that book, they call it WIGS, WIGS, wildly important goals, and coming up with the path of execution for you to be able to meet those wildly important goals. So I'll use a simple model called systems thinking to try and just in 5 minutes articulate what the method for actually executing looks like. So when you look at systems thinking, a simple guide, as you can see, right from where we started from, it's always starting with goals. Everything in this world is a system. Everything. That's my contention. That's my philosophy. In fact, I think the Bible says somewhere, Hosea 4:6, my people perish for lack of knowledge. And then somewhere in Ecclesiastes it says there is a time for everything. Basically, everything is a system. If you're an agronomist, if you're a farmer, if you plant during winter, you can shake your fists to the heavens however much you want. Haitamea. You need to know how that farming system or the planting system and the agricultural cycle works. You plant in the rainy season. You don't plant in the dry season. So once you know what you're trying to achieve, you must know how that system works, which is what we call process. It's similar to the 3 circles we looked at in the beginning. Now, what you're trying to achieve during execution is determine questions 2A and 2B. What conditions must be created for this process to work, for this system to work? If you know your systems. So I'll use a small example, an example which all of us will understand, I hope. When I have been given the goal of number 8, I'm using a mathematics example. I have been given the goal of number 8 and have been told, use the process of addition to get to number 8. Then I'm told, select any 2 numbers. Those are my inputs. So if I need to get to number 8 using addition, then I can use the number 0 plus 8. I can use the number 1 plus 7. I can use the numbers 2 and 6. I can use the number 5 and 3. And I can use the number 4 and 4. And I'm told you can only use multiplication to get to 8. 5 and 3 no longer work as inputs. If my process is multiplication, 5 and 3 will get me to 15. So that is out. 1 and 7 will no longer work. It will get me to 7, not 8. 0 and 8 will get me to 0, not 8. 4 and 4. Yeah, I could use 4 2 times. So I could say 4 and 2. So you see how just a change in the process changed the inputs that were required. Destination was the same. Ninaenda Mombasa, ninataka kujua kama nitaenda na SGR ama na JKIA Jambo Jet ama na bado ndege Wilson Safari Link ama niende na basi ama niende na Modhikiri. I'm in a cycling group where I cycled to Mombasa ama niende na pikipiki. So you see how the options are many. So I need to know, what am I going to do there? What is the process I must use? Then it can help me determine what inputs I choose. So since here we are discussing personal finance goals, these are the 4 steps you must go through for you to be able to achieve the goals that we have discussed at the beginning: financial security, financial independence, and financial freedom. One, you need to, if we still stay on the same slide, one, you need to conduct your own personal financial assessment. We need to do, in business language, I think this is what you call a situation analysis. Even when, as photographers, you're going to be given a venue to photograph where you have never been, reconnaissance. Unaangalia what is the lighting condition, what are the surface nature of surfaces, can I bounce my light, where, if I'm using powered lights, how close are the sockets, do I need to bring a long cable? You need to do a situation analysis so that nijue penye niko. And then step 2, I need to know which options I have. Naweza enda Mombasa na baiskeli, pikipiki, gari, ndege, SGR. So you conduct a market research. And in corporate language, we say SWOT analysis. What are the opportunities and threats? And for each option, what are its strengths and weaknesses in meeting those opportunities while avoiding the threats? Then finally, I need to know, where do I want to go in terms of what are the things that I have in my hand, and what can I be able to do to make these things work. So that, in corporate language, we call it a gap analysis. And we also can put in place the word planning, but I will summarize that into an image called the path, which you will see in the next slide. But before we go there, step 4, once you have already been able to put all this in place, when you read the book of the 4 disciplines of execution, which is disciplines of execution, then you will be able to see, 1, how to put in place mechanisms that will help you measure your progress. But because we always know that you can be mark timing but not moving forward, so we also do not want to only measure activity, we want to also measure the performance. So when we go to the next slide, we will be able to see what is this path that we are talking about. Path is basically a summary of what is the project, what is the average, what is the target, or what is the habit that will get me from my current situation to where I want to go. So the blue circle is the goal. If you do not start with a goal, if I do not know whether I want to go to Mombasa, nikiwekwa kwa basi ya kwenda Kisumu, bado ni sawa. If you do not know where you're going, any road will take you there. So it is important that you do your personal status assessment, your personal financial status assessment, so that you can see the red circle, where am I today? And where do I need to be in the next 2 years, in the next 5 years, in the next 10 years? Security bucket, growth bucket, and dreams bucket. Then, what are the letter P projects that I need to do for me to be able to get to the various goals? What is the average performance that I need to maintain? You will now hear language like, I need to be saving 200 shillings per day, meaning that is a goal that is numerical, 200, and the duration of the goal is infinite. So you have to just measure it according to cycles. So you can choose per day, per week, per month, per quarter, per year. It's up to you. Depends on which bucket you're talking about. If you're talking of the dreams bucket, you need to be talking of long-term cycles. I need to have achieved 200,000 per year for my dreams bucket. I need to be saving 200 shillings per day for my immediate expenses under the security bucket. So this is a simplification of how to come up with strategy so that you have an action plan divided into those various aspects with respect to achieving your goals. So I'll just give you two examples, which are Excel screenshots. The depending on how soon your goal is. If you look at the column written savings target, the main number there is, forget the 25,000, 5,000, 100,000 for kila mtu ako na mfuko size yake. We all know we wear different shoe sizes. So my 40% might not be Nderitu's 40%, might not be your 40%. But if you are 25 years and below, hauna mtoto, hopefully, hauna bibi, hopefully, you're not your parents' retirement plan, meaning hawapati pesa mingi. What I am trying to say is, if you are 25 years and below, it is highly unlikely. It's possible, but it is highly unlikely that you have too many people depending on you. So you can save 50% of your income. Ukifinya sana, save 40% of your income. So that way, 60% of your income, you don't have to waste it right now on beer, women, and gadgets like me. But you can save that money for asset accumulation, itakusaidia huko mbele. If you're between 26 and 35, you probably have one kid, one wife, or your parents are now old enough to require your support financially. So maybe you can drop your savings target to 30% of all your income. Kama tithe, peleka 10% kwa Mungu, weka 30% kwa savings account. Then survive on the rest. Notice, I am not saying start by putting up your budget of expenses, then save the balance. No, start with the goal. If I am below 25, I need to be accumulating assets. Save 40 or 50% of my income. And as you grow older, when you're 65 years old, that is when now you need to be getting that money. So at that age, I don't want you to be saving. I want you to actually be generating income from your assets. So people like me and Nderitu who are approaching fourth floor, tuko kwa hii middle stage inaitwa asset growth. Whatever money we have been accumulating over the last 10, 15, 20 years, we need to have invested it in those Safaricom stories I was telling you about, a plot somewhere in Joska, or a bond somewhere in one of the government bonds, so that now it grows over that period when we are waiting for the growth bucket to mature. So that now, if you go to the next slide, you will find that when you look at your budget process, don't do what people usually do, starting with expenses and then saving the minimum. No. Start with your savings target. So in this example, I have saved 15,000 shillings. So if I could use the example of 50,000, that column which shows monthly salary is 50,000. It means I can save that 15% and split it three ways. 20% of that 15,000, I put it for emergency fund. That is the 1,500. Then 20% of that 15% of savings, I put it in insurance for school policy or education policy, medical policy, whatever my goals might be. Then 60% I convert it into an asset. That is 4,500. Then now the balance is what I spend on necessities, food, housing, transport, clothes, and discretionary expenses, entertainment, family support, sports, others. So if we had more time, we would have gone through this in Excel and you would have seen how to actually implement. The yellow boxes are the only things which in your goals and personal assessment, you are allowed to touch. So that now you can say that for this goal, I want to be able to achieve 30% of my incomes as saving. Then instead of 15 at the top there, we put 30. And then if I come at the bottom here, I say, no, because I am in marketing as a photographer, freelance, I cannot say that. I can only put 85% of my balance, which is now coming to 72.3% in necessities. No, I have to put a bit of a bigger budget in good shoes, in marketing, in a good car, so that my 12.8% goes higher. So those are the things which now we can personalize when we are doing your own personal budget. But in principle, this is the structure, so that at the end of the day, every coin you're spending has a purpose. It's not wasted and it is not blind. So that by the time you are now looking at keeping to the disciplines of execution, because budgeting is hard. When you go to the next slide, you'll find that the disciplines of execution demand that you know, one, your goals, two, what are the key influencers of your goals. We call them lead measures. So if I pushed just the first block as shown on that image, it will affect everything else. In business, we call them critical success factors. Identify those things which, on the budget, those yellow boxes, which ratios are critical. Then put those ones into your plan. Then when you read that book of 4 disciplines of execution, it will show you how to set up a dashboard to track your performance and progress. That is what they're calling a scoreboard. The reason why human beings are very emotional about sports is because it is a form of war. We want to feel that we have won the other side. And because we cannot go planting spears in each other, we put a scoreboard. Premier League table, Olympic gold medals, jackpots, and all that. So even for your own personal finance goals, if you do not put for yourself a tracking system that will reward you emotionally, hautaweza. So read that book and they will teach you how to design for anything which you come up for with a goal for. A compelling scoreboard. And finally, that book teaches us that if you do not have an accountability partner who every week or every month or every quarter or every year, depending on your cycles, short-term goals, that's a daily or weekly report back. If it is a medium-term goal, that's a monthly report back. If it is a long-term goal, that's an annual report back. If you do not have that accountability, then you will not be able to meet your goals. So when you're implementing your 4 disciplines of execution, these are the 3 things that you must do. 1, know what you want. I want to look like Arnold Schwarzenegger when he was 25. Know what you have. I have these assets, e.g. the gym, I have my time, and I have my discipline to know failure is not an option. Then number 3, put that accountability cycle for your goals. So that if you're Arnold Schwarzenegger at 70, don't try and come up with savings targets of 50% of your income. It can't work. You can't look like you're 25. It's a lie. How the world works is that there is a process, there's a time for everything. December ni time ya kuacha shamba ikae, at least in Nairobi. March, April, rainy season, hiyo ndo time ya kupanda. So kama wewe ni mzee, sio time ya kupanda sahi. Kama wewe ni kijana, sio time ya kuishi life sahi. Don't try and reap the little thing, the little value of assets which you need to actually be growing so that you reap it in future. But all this, we can now encapsulate it in personalized sessions where if you want to actually go through this personal assessment that has these 3 steps that you can see on this slide, it would require 2 hours on its own. So the best we can do is say that, thank you. We can stop there and say that when you want to be able to implement this particular on your own personal finances, you can please contact the chairman, Nderitu, at the PAK office. He can link you up with me directly if he does not already share my contacts with these slides, and we can actually go through your own personalized version of financial planning. And with that, asanteni sana. Back to you, Steve, to moderate the question and answer session. Asante.
Thank you very much, David. Thank you, thank you. That was very, very helpful. I think first and foremost, I want to pick Michael Odhiambo's comment on YouTube. Is saying, "This is amazing. My heart is full. Thank you for all this knowledge. Please touch on profitable platforms to invest and save our money in. This is in short-term and long-term basis." Let me repeat. Please touch on profitable platforms to invest our money in. This is in short-term and long-term basis. Yes, maybe perhaps you can respond to that. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you. So depends on your goals. So this is where I'll start implementing the theory we have just walked over. So if your goal in short term is to generate passive income, then I would say put that money in something like a SACCO that will give you 12% or something like money markets. But if your goal is to protect your money for immediate drawdown or for immediate use when you're in an emergency, I would probably say put it in something like bank deposits, but they are very poor. They are very poor income generation, but at least you can break the deposit. If you're looking to put the money in short term, but this is for more of, I'm not really interested in growing the value. I'm not really interested in being able to draw down on it, but I want to be able to cover an emergency such as medical. Then, depending on the maturity period of your insurance policy, then I can take a bit of an insurance policy that will cover my short-term expenses. So things to do like medical cover, personal accident, so that if I'm in a risky biashara, ninaendesha bodaboda kila siku, then you might find yourself in an accident where out of the blue you need 200k. So that should be able to take care of your short-term liabilities. On the medium term, if you're trying to generate cash, generate income on the medium term, that is goal type number 1, then I would put that money in government security that is short term, like a treasury bond or a 2-year infrastructure, 91 days, 6 months, or 1 year. But a bond is anything between, take a tax-free investment like an infrastructure bond. And for the very long shares, I've given you the example of Safaricom, or you can be able to put money towards building small rental properties like building some small rooms in real estate, or if you can afford the more expensive type where you put up a whole block of studios or a whole office block or whatever big real estate. Now, shares and real estate are more towards the long term, and that is if you're trying to grow the value of your money. But if you're trying to protect the cash flows and not looking at is bonds that are long term in nature, they will not be growing your value, but they will give you a steady income over the life of the bond. If it is a 1 year bond, 2 year bond, 10-year bond, it will give you every 6 months some income, but it will not grow your value. So you can see, depending on your goals, those are the various investments that you can consider.
Okay, we've got David Mashari. I think he's using the tag versatile photographers. He's saying thank you for sharing. He's appreciating what you're doing.
Karibu.
Um,
Karibu.
we have um, on Facebook. I just want to acknowledge David. Those who are following, we have Ada Owade, we have Munene Mwiti Boniface, we have Yakub Seje, and we have Kwetu Photo Studio who are following on Facebook. We don't have any further questions there, but I think there's one that has just popped up where someone is asking. I think Michael Odhiambo, let's go to his second question on YouTube. How can growing photographers, anyone, reach you for personal mentorship guidance through finance? I think we're going to share his email address, David's email address, so that you guys are able to you're able to get in touch with David and also get in touch with PAK so that we can support you on that. So the two comments. How do I know I am on a realistic? David, can you hear me? I can see your network is a little bit erratic right now. David? Okay, Charlotte, I can see you're asking how do I know I'm on a realistic uh, how do I know that I'm on a realistic saving space for what I want to do when I'm near retirement age? And Tim Ngoge, where can we insure our equipment? Maybe you can touch on this as a photographer and a financial expert. Outbox communication, good discussion, David. Thanks for this. I am in. We have lost David for a minute. Okay, can see he's coming back, and we will just in a minute or so. As we try to get David back, can you hear me, David? You can put on your mic. We have one or two questions so that we can go on. Okay, unmute, David.
Okay, am I back?
Yes, you're back and I can hear you.
Okay, so for that,
You want to use this one or the one that's dialing? You use the phone, eh? Okay. You can hear me?
yes, I can hear you. You can hear me?
Okay. Yes. So, Facebook, we have Charlotte who's asking, how do I know I'm on a realistic saving space for what I want to do when I'm near retirement age? I repeat, how do I know I am on a realistic saving space for what I want to do when I'm near retirement age? That's one of the questions that we have from one of the people
Okay.
who are following. Yes. How do I know that I'm on a realistic saving pace for what? I don't know if we go back to that slide or the one that was showing the age brackets.
Yeah, you can go to the slide which the first.
The
Yeah,
first one.
the first exam.
That one. Structure your budget according to the ages.
Yeah, that
Yes.
one.
Okay. Go ahead. Okay.
Okay, thank you. So when you look at the left column, age in years, and you consider yourself under one of the rows, what you need to look at is the column number 3 with passive income. Right at the bottom, the age 65, the pink row, you can see I have said your income replacement ratio should be 70%. Meaning, from analyzing all the retirees that have existed till now, we have been able to assess and see that when you have retired, about 30% of your expenses should go away. You're no longer going to work every day, meaning transport in your budget is less. You're no longer paying school fees unless you have retirement babies, meaning your expenditure on school and children is less. Actually, you should be getting support from them, but they are not supposed to be a retirement plan. So when you look at your savings, it needs to have accumulated into an asset base where I'll just use the number 10% as an average. If you do your living expenses today and you do 70% of that, what is the number? So let's say that today I live on 100,000 per month. So by the time I retire, I should be retiring on an income of 70,000 per month. That 70,000 is per month. So I do times 12. So 70 times 10 is 700,000 plus 140. 840,000 per year should be the amount of money I should be able to be making per year when I retire if I am living on 100,000 per month today. That is assuming a 70% income replacement ratio. So for you to be able to know whether your savings are near there, just know that your average return or profits or passive income from assets is usually around 10%. Meaning if I need to be generating 840,000 per year, I need to have saved 8.4 million by the time I have retired. So how far am I, or how close am I to getting 8.4 million by the time I retire? So if I am 25 and I am earning that 100,000 per month today, I have another 40 years to get to the 8.4 million. If I am 55, I only have 10 years. If I am 60, I only have 5 years to get to 8.4 million. So when we are doing your personal finance classes, I have simplified that, but I have tried to paint a picture of how we do the reverse engineering for us to be able to assess whether you actually are close to your desired target. That is an oversimplification, but it gives you a general idea of how we can assess. Maybe Steve, you can confirm that you can still hear me as you remind me the next question.
Yes.
Thank you.
I can hear you. I can hear you loud and clear, and that answer where you're explaining further. So, the other question is perhaps not very direct to what you're saying, but either way about money. What is your advice on buying gear versus renting gear? What is your advice on buying gear versus renting gear? That is from Michelle Adhiambo on YouTube. David, did you hear what the question that I read? Uh, can did you hear my question?
No. Please repeat.
Okay, maybe you need to turn off one of the gadgets. So, what is your advice about buying gear versus renting gear? Michelle Adhiambo on YouTube is asking, what's your advice on buying gear versus renting gear? I think you're on. Please unmute, David.
Can you hear me now?
Yes. You need to turn down the volume for one of the gadgets, sir. Okay, go ahead. Go ahead.
Okay.
Yes.
Better?
Yes.
I've been working on a certain project with Georgia Dulu, who I believe spoke with you a few days ago.
I think you need to turn one of the gadgets. Maybe we decide the one that we are using. Okay. I think we can use this one, but unmute and use this one, the mobile phone. Just unmute so that we can hear you. Hi. You've been working on a project. Just 1 minute. Go ahead. We've been working on a project. No, we cannot hear you. I don't know why we can't hear you. No, we cannot. We cannot hear you. Maybe try and bring the other one. In the meantime, just try and bring the other one as I try to read what guys have posted. Let's see.
Is that better?
Yes.
Okay, sorry. My gadgets are letting me down today. So I was saying, with respect to gear, my live example is right now we've actually been working on a project with Georgia Dulu, whom I believe spoke with you a few days back, and we tried hiring gear. The expenses of hiring gear within 1 month were equivalent to me, or rather us, having bought the gear in the first place. So my quick advice is, for good finance, photography gear is quite expensive to hire, where the buy versus rent question is clearly on the buy side, because it is not as heavy on maintenance when you look at other big time assets like property, cars, where the operating expenses is so high such that leasing might make sense. But for photography, given the risk of damage, the straight advice I'd give for that is just buy it. It's cheaper from a personal finance planning.
Okay. We have another question. Just touch a little bit about bookkeeping, mixing business and personal funds as a photographer. Kindly touch on bookkeeping and mixing business and personal funds as a photographer. That's also from Michelle Adhiambo from YouTube. Yes.
Okay. Thanks. I'm smiling because that is somebody who almost already knows that their conscience is pricking them. So, when you look at the nature of that question, it already tells you that you need to be able to separate personal finance from business finance. If you need to look at your business as a source of your personal income, then pay yourself a salary. So to cross over into bookkeeping, it means separate your personal finance bookkeeping from your photography business or videography business bookkeeping. One, so that you remember when we said we are looking at either growing or mixed the two, then you don't know whether you're in a profit or loss situation. And if you're looking asset value position, or you're bankrupt, where your liabilities are more than your assets. So it is better for you to be able to determine whether you're actually making income and whether you're actually growing value. It is better if you separate the two books of accounts. And for both the business, if I could overly simplify and overly summarize, for both the business and for yourself, there are three statements you need to always track, week by week, if possible. Your cash flows, which is your basic bank statement, in and out. This is money that came in, this is money that came out. Separate the personal cash flow from the business cash flow. So the business cash flow, money coming in is an invoice was paid, money going out was I spent something like lighting or Uber for the business, not for personal reasons. When you're looking at cash flows for personal, it's basically this is the income I got from my business, and these are the expenses that I paid in form of rent, food, and all those other expenses we talked about. So cash flow is the first book you need to keep. Number two is profit and loss. You need to be able to track from those cash flows, how much money did I bring in total sales, and how much money did I pay out in total expenses? Was there any balance left, profit, or did we go into loss? And then coming from that, the third book you need to keep is your balance sheet. This profit that we were able to generate, did we convert it into an asset? So in my balance sheet, what are the list of assets I bought? And in my balance sheet, kuna deni gani nimeshindwa kulipa. So you offset the two, and at the end, at the bottom there, you can call it either net worth or net asset value. So to summarize, those are the three books or the three statements of finance. At the very basic minimum, you must keep. Separate personal from business, cash flows, profit and loss, and balance sheet.
Okay. I think I have a question uh, that I have been curious on myself, David. So we are in a pandemic, and things
Yes.
are thick, things are elephant.
Yes.
We have seen people trying to diversify. We know friends who have perhaps are now doing less photography, and they are getting into other totally different. Mtu ameenda farming, mtu ameenda kazi ya carpentry, mwingine amefungua restaurant, mwingine ameanza kuuza mayai. David Macharia told us he's selling eggs in Masai Mara, somewhere in Narok. So hata mimi nafikiria kuanza kuweka ng'ombe ama mbuzi because business has been disrupted. Seriously, business has been disrupted. The fact that we're in a pandemic, a lot of opportunities have gone. Of course, there are those industries that have been severely affected, hospitality, travel, and all that. Others have grown; they are thriving. You know, technology solutions, Zoom, Google Meet. They are laughing all the way to the bank. You know, things like e-learning. But what are your own personal insights bring it down to our level of photography, freelancers, creative business? What are some of the tips that you can just give us? Hii maisha sasa tuipeleke aje juu haitupeleki vizuri, you know. So what are some of the things that you can tell us, very real, very real, ukue real kabisa. Yeah.
Mm. Okay, thank you. We have all been affected by this thing called the pandemic, and with respect to COVID and its effects on not only business but on the economy in general, of which business, I've gathered some insights which I can try and share, and you see how it applies to your business. One, players for any government. Those are the big spenders of money in any economy. Then the second player in any economy is private business. We call them the private sector. That is you and me, the entrepreneurs, whether big or small. Then the third player in any economy is the households. So some of us only appear in one sector, like children only appear in the household. They don't make decisions anywhere else. You and me probably appear in two sectors. We make purchase decisions at home, and we make purchase decisions for our businesses. What will we buy from other businesses and things like that. And then the people who work in government appear in all three sectors. They have a home, they probably have a side hustle. This is Kenya. And they also make decisions on behalf of government. So I've given you that background so that you understand how the economy works. The economy works by one, creating something that another person needs.
David, we have lost you a bit. Tumekupoteza kidogo.
And that
David, our connections seem to have lost you. We are just waiting for you to come back with a clear. The connection is still a bit unreliable, David. We cannot hear you. You can hear us, sir? Okay, sorry.
You can
I
hear
don't
me?
know. Yes, we can hear you. I think the connection was a bit erratic, but I will request that you pick it up from where you are telling us about the third person. that this is Kenya. So there is that person who is in government. I think they make their decisions on all the three levels. Please pick it up from there.
Okay, good. So the three sources for demand, if you are in business and you want to know what to do to generate products which will remain in demand, is create products that a household can buy. So in photography, I think you call it family photos, videos for weddings and burial ceremonies, where a family, a household, is the decision maker. Number two, in the economy, the private sector or other businesses like you and me, entrepreneurs, are also decision makers. So people who are photographers will need to buy equipment. So the businesses that sell equipment to other businesses like photography are in business. Then thirdly, government is the third person in the economy who buys goods and services. So any of us can sit either in the household or in private business or even in government across all three. Because the people in government, some might have side hustles, so they make private sector decisions. They are operating in government and they also have homes. So now I've given you that background so that when I'm addressing you now, I ask you the kind of photography that you are doing or video business. Who was your target market? Was it the household? Was it a private business? Or was it government? Because I'll tell you this, in times of war, and I'll use COVID as an example of a time of war, when curfews are imposed, lockdowns are imposed, cessation of movement, and all those things which look like times of war, then people who spend money, whether it is the home, which is the household, whether it's a business or whether it's the government, they will only spend money on the bare essentials. So for a private household, the basic essential is food, shelter, clothing. Are you in that business? And that is why you see some people defaulting now into agriculture, whether it is selling food or doing farming, or but it is something to do with food. Or they will get into real estate because private houses still have to be in rent, and then they will get into clothing business because people still need to wear clothes. So in terms of video and photography, in those three spaces, food, shelter, clothing, are you in a space where, like for example, Airbnb, there is still relevance for real estate photography? Is it true that people still want to do a private birthday and therefore that business owner of the Airbnb property will still look for your service because you are an essential service to him? If you do not take a good photo of his premises, he might not be able to sell. Or are you selling to other businesses? So are you targeting corporates? And whatever you're targeting for corporates, is it an essential service? So they've scaled down events, so meaning they don't think events are essential services. Probably you need to do portraits because this is now the time they have the time to do their websites. This is the time they have to revamp their profiles when they are, in quotes, idle.
Yes.
So you have to think from the reverse. And then finally, government. What would they still have in demand right now? You can see that they are really struggling to pay anybody or anything. Even government salaries, their workers are struggling. So while we say government is usually the most reliable spender, they are really not able to cope with the crisis that the COVID pandemic has brought on them, that they're not being able to meet their tax collection targets, meaning those budgets they had to spend are no longer there. So maybe now for you as photographers, you need to think from a reverse engineered point of view. How can I get into food business? Must my photography business tag along? And if I can combine the two, what am I doing in the food business that will remain as an essential budget item either for the corporate who will pay me or for the private? Things like graduations. The reason why I'm doing thing in my car today and I'm hustling like this is because I'm somewhere where my daughter is doing a competition. So I'm trying to juggle. So there are some things even with COVID to do with my private household that I've had to hire a photographer. There's a photographer there who I've hired and I'm paying, and he's taking the photos for me. So some family functions still remain circumscribed and they remain sacred. So are you targeting those type of family functions so that even if large-scale events have been done away with, can you target birthdays? Did you build enough social capital so that when that person who has birthdays, funerals, and weddings, even if they're just for 15 people,
Yes.
they'll still need photography. So you need to think from a reverse engineered point of view, what budgets in a company, what budgets in a household, what budgets in government remain essential.
Correct.
How can I squeeze myself in that budget?
Okay.
That way you will remain in business,
Okay.
even in tough times like COVID.
Okay. You started by telling us about times of war. And that parallel is scary, but it's very realistic. I believe it is very realistic. Those days when we were all in our houses for 3 months in March last year, it was not funny. It was not funny. The extent of financial strain that people are going through. Kuna watu wamerudisha familia ushago. Others have split because of the strain that people are going through. Levels of depression and mental health issues, they've gone up. You two watu wamesota na biz high work. So I think we want to stop there. One last comment from Alia Othana on Facebook. We said that's awesome, Mr. David. You explained so well that I understand. And I hope I have been able to appreciate all the people who are following Tim Njugi, Othana, Charlotte Mkamzungu, Michelle Odhiambo, David Masharia through Versatile Photographers, Outbox Communications, I believe that is Sagina. We have Picha Zawanga. Picha Zawanga umechelewa, but you can go back and watch and listen. And everybody else who was able to follow. David, thank you very much for your time. We hope we will see you soon. Saa zingine unapoteanga sana kutoka PAK, but we understand your job. So that you can also tell us who are those who are investing during COVID, so that we can also jump there. And thank you for taking the time, like you had told me earlier, guys who are following. Waf ameenda kuona mtoto wake kwa event, wanafanya martial arts and things like that. So he's taken the time off to come and do this in the parking of where the event is happening. And we pray that God will bless you in excess of your time. Those who are following, asanteni sana. We have to leave so that we go and set up at Samuel Geshoki's workshop in town, where we are going to have the last session starting at 2:30. Samuel Geshoki is one of the top guys who repairs our cameras and other accessories. So he'll be taking us through that session from 2:30, and I will be with him there. This is the last session of the Kenya Photo Week. Asanteni sana. Goodbye, Waf.
Karibu. Goodbye too. Asante for the opportunity.
Thank you.
Have a nice weekend. Asante.
Guys, bye-bye.